Today, I'm going to be sharing with you the car that made me fall in love with cars. Yes, that's right, this exact car. This is my 2003 Mercedes SL 500. However, it wasn't always mine. It used to be my grandfather's, and back in the early 2000s, I was awestruck by this thing. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I always used to think to myself, oh, what would it be like to drive it? So that's why owning this for me now is so special. I've had a few of these cars actually. This isn't my only one. This is my third one. So let's put it this way. When it comes to ownership experience, I've seen every side of early 2000s SL ownership experience, the good stuff, the bad stuff, and everything in between. So sentimental stuff aside, today's video is going to focus on what you should expect in owning one of these cost-wise, some of the things to look out for if you're thinking of buying one, but most importantly, what makes these cars so special as they approach the age of becoming modern classics. So let's get right into it. If you're thinking to yourself, could I daily drive this? My answer to that is absolutely. As long as you don't deal with snow, these are very comfortable and surprisingly usable. I'll show you the trunk in a minute. You can actually fit a decent amount of stuff in there. But even 20 years later, these cars are a very nice place to be in. As you can see, the doors are fully leather wrapped, along with the dash and the lower dash. And one thing that's pretty neat that a lot of people don't know about is, even though this is a really old navigation system, and honestly you'd use it for nothing now, you don't have to change it because there is an auxiliary port in the glove box that you could use to plug your phone in, making life easy. And the stereo system from factory is quite good. And when it comes to trunk and storage capacity, it's really not that bad. With the top down, you are limited on space, but if you have to access things, you can put the top up and you have a decent sized trunk. It's nothing too big, but say if you had to go out and shopping at groceries and stuff like that, you should have no issues there. So as you can see, these cars are fairly practical considering they are roadsters. However, before we go for a drive, I just want to share with you the one modification that I did, and that was a muffler delete. And it has done wonders for this car. Just take a listen. Hope you enjoyed that little exhaust clip. Let's go for a drive. Let's get a little acceleration in, shall we? Yeah, it's not the fastest, but it'll still put a smile on your face because of that amazing sound. So one of the things you have to understand about the SL, especially this generation SL, is they really weren't all-out sports cars. They were more grand touring cars. And, you know, that's because of just how heavy they were. You know, they weren't the sharpest corner carvers. I mean, for God's sakes, this car is like 4,600 pounds. I'm not sure the exact amount, but still, over 4,000 pounds. That's very heavy for a sports car, so that means it's really a GT car. But that's not really a bad thing, because one of the things I appreciate the most about this generation SL is that it's modern in the sense that you don't feel like you're driving a super old car, but you still have maintained the charm of the older SLs with that amazing build quality. I mean, these cars, you know, you close the door and you feel that thump, and it's just like a G-Wagon. You know, you feel that sense of quality, and the way that the interior's constructed, it just feels so solidly built. Nothing groans, squeaks, or rattles, even to this day. And this car is just about 20 years old, which is very impressive to say the least. I get in some brand new Mercedes and all the panels are squeaking, groaning, rattling, you name it. It's really annoying. But this one, not so much. And it sounds great too. I mean, stock, not so much, but with this muffler delete I did, just take a listen. It's not the fastest car out there. As I said earlier, with only 300 horsepower, this is a heavy car. But it really does put a smile on my face. And I did that because, you know, now that I have my newer S-Class coupe, that car has 460 horsepower, which makes this car feel slow. So I had to do something to make this car still feel fun. And that was definitely the perfect fix. If you're thinking about doing it and you already have an SL, I strongly recommend it. It should cost you no more than $200-300. All they need to do is delete the rear resonators and just form pipe. You can even use the stock tips afterwards, and you're done. And honestly, it doesn't really drone bad at all at low RPMs. And when you have the top up, it only sounds a little bit louder than stock. So it's really not bad to live with at all. Now let's talk reliability and costs you should expect to see when owning one of these cars. So first off, the SL500s of this generation came with a naturally aspirated 5-liter V8. I'm going to put the specs up on the screen. About 350, 360 foot-pounds of torque, and it was made into a 5-speed automatic transmission. Pretty bulletproof powertrain for the most part. One of the things that I recommend you change right away when you get one of these cars, because it's very cheap, it's called the cam position sensor or crankshaft position sensor, one or the other. And what that does is it tells the computer where the cam is when the motor's going to start, and if it doesn't get a good read, it won't let the engine start, and that can leave you on the side of the road walking. So just get it changed. It's actually very cheap because you don't know if it's been changed or not. The second thing I'd recommend is when you get one of these cars, change all the fluids. You don't know how long these cars have been sitting for, especially if it's a lower mileage example. It's just a good, you know, fail-safe to do because you don't want to break unnecessary things because you were too cheap to change the fluid. Now, the major area of cost when it comes to these cars is the suspension system. Keep in mind, these cars are old now, so pretty much every car is going to have some kind of issue. These cars have what's called active body control, which is a hydraulic active suspension system. So what that means is in the turns, the car actually levels itself to counteract body roll. It'll pitch itself into the turn. And it's one of the most enjoyable things about this car. It's really cool, and it virtually eliminates all body roll, especially when hard cornering. It's an amazing system. It's both comfortable and makes a 4,000 pound plus car actually handle. But it is very costly. One of the things that can go, especially on some of the cars 90,000 miles and above, is the pump for the system, and the pumps are usually around $1,300 to change, give or take, plus the fluid. So you're looking at least $2,500 there. Basically, anytime you're dealing with the suspension bill, it's usually at least $2,000 to $4,000 to fix. So you definitely want to make sure that you've gotten a car that has lower miles, less wear and tear on the systems, less abuse, so that you kind of avoid these costs for as long as possible. But to give you an idea, if you had to change pretty much all the parts, like you had to really go through the car like I did, because my car has 146,000 miles, that'll cost you over time about $12,000. $12,000 to $14,000. So it is a very expensive cost, but there are coilover kits. You can convert them if you really wanted to save money. So don't let the suspension system completely scare you away. But I highly recommend that you fix the stock one, because when it is working properly, it really makes the experience of the car. To keep these cars on the road working well, if your car's been kept up with and you don't have to take care of, neglected maintenance, expect to spend at least $3,000 to $5,000 a year to keep these cars going. If you have issues. Sometimes, maybe not, but that's generally what I've spent. But approaching turns, you could see this suspension just keeps this car perfectly level. And it's a real lot of fun. You could carry a good amount of speed these cars are fun, but I think what really holds it back, especially these earlier cars, I never drove one with the 7-speed transmission, is the 5-speed transmission. The 5-speed transmission, you can kind of manually shift it, but not really. It's not like a paddle shifter. You bump the transmission lever left and right, and you could choose to hold it in a gear, downshift, or sometimes upshift. I think that's something that kind of lets the car down from like a fun standpoint. If this car was manual, I mean, it would be so much fun. But you know, if you really want to hold it in a gear, you can. I mean, there we go, we just downshifted, but it's not something that you'll probably use a lot. But just take a listen. In terms of power, I'd say that the SL500 is quick, but it's definitely not fast. If you're looking for something, you know, like quick by today's standards, I highly recommend you go for the SL55, because overall, based on most reviews, it's basically just as reliable as this car. The supercharged 5.4 V8 was one of the most reliable motors that Mercedes built as well, AMG built. And it has 493 horsepower instead of 302 horsepower, which really makes a difference, especially in a car that weighs this much. If you want to take it on road trips, this is a very comfortable car to road trip. I've taken multiple road trips in this car. Well, not this particular one. My past SLs. I've driven it up to Canada, I've driven it out to Cleveland, and I'm in Connecticut, so these are pretty far trips. I've gone down to Florida, Louisiana, South Carolina, you name it. I've taken it on long trips, like 20-hour plus drives, and it's honestly the perfect car for that. It really is. And another nice thing is the wind management in this car. Now, a lot of convertibles, when you have the top down, the wind's blowing everywhere, and you know, it could be a little bit annoying, but with all the windows up and the windscreen up in the back, it's really not that bad. I mean, I'm driving with the top down on a 50-degree day in fall, and I'm very comfortable. You know, with the seat warmer on, and a little bit of heat on, it's not bad at all. So overall, the SL500 is a great car, especially if you're looking for a daily driver / weekend cruiser that you could put the top down in and take it for a road trip if you wanted to, or just whatever. It's a very well-versed car unless you have to deal with winter conditions. But if you're looking for more of a sports car experience, I definitely recommend you stretch for the SL55 of this generation. It was known to be pretty much just as reliable for the most part, considering these cars aren't that reliable to begin with. It's about the same in maintenance, so why not just spend a little bit more and get the car with 500 horsepower? I think that would go a long way in making this experience even more fun. But if you're not really looking at one of these to have one with a crazy amount of power, then this should definitely fit the bill. Well, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it for you. If you haven't done so yet, hit the like button for me and subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss out on future videos on the channel. Remember, I typically do new car reviews, new car comparisons, classics, exotics. So be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss out. With that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.